Welcome to Kathy on the Couch, your podcast for everyday clinicians who sit with grief, trauma, and the hardest human experiences every day. You weren't meant to carry this alone, and this is a space for therapists who hold space for others and sometimes need a place to be held too. I am Kathy, and I am your EMDR consultant, trainer, and thanatologist, specializing in methods of death, dying, and bereavement. I created this podcast to support those who do the deep work, especially trauma and grief therapists and EMDR clinicians needing a soft place to land, who want real conversations, meaningful support, and a community where the hard questions are finally welcome. We also are thrilled to share and announce our Kathy on the Couch membership community, which is your home for grief and trauma consultation, professional growth. It's by therapists, for therapists, where you find a monthly consultation group. You'll find a monthly NBCC CE training. You'll get access to a course module and resource kits. We're so happy to have you in one place, and you don't have to go looking for all those items in all the places. You can just come here. So we hold space for those who hold it all. That's our mission, where we talk honestly about all clinical challenges in the business of being a healer through curriculum development and training and breaking the silence to lead and thrive in the field without losing ourselves in the process. So, if you're looking to join for deeper connection, I invite you to join our membership community to help you learn and grow. Or if you're an EMDR therapist looking to be certified or a consultant, we have our program, EMDR University. Remember to give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast. Now, let's get comfortable and let's head on over to the couch.
So be sure to check out our show notes for a full list of courses, and don't forget to visit our swag store at rewired360.shop. Also, check out our show notes if you're interested in learning more about EMDR intensives or want to look at innovative tools like Derma Doctor Tappers, and you'll find the links in our show notes. A quick disclaimer: the information shared on this podcast reflects the perspectives and experiences of our guests and hosts. It's not intended to substitute for professional consultation, supervision, or individual guidance. If you have questions about how to apply any of the concepts discussed, we encourage you to consult with your clinical supervisor, consultant, or your local supervision board. As always, follow research-based protocols and best practices in your work. We're here to walk alongside you as you deepen your understanding of EMDR. And until next time, keep connecting, learning, and keep rewiring for success. Take care. This is Kathy Couch. On behalf of Tony Parmenter and the entire team, thank you for being here with us on the couch, and we'll see you in the next episode. Welcome we are here today with a fabulous conversation with Messina Delgado. She's a part of my EMDR University program. She's an LPCA, not fully licensed, but still, we have an amazing connection over neurodivergence, and we laugh a lot. So lots of laughs. And I am Kathy Couch, your Rewired 360 host out here in Twin Falls, Idaho. I own Willow Creek Counseling and Rewired 360, where we teach therapists how to learn, lead, and thrive and create their own thriving practices. You can see me at rewired360.com. And I help therapists like Messina get their EMDR certification. That's how I met her. And I'm mentoring her through that process. So I'm going to turn it over to her, and then we'll get into our conversation about neurodivergence.
Okay. Hi. How's it going? Yeah. What do you want to start?
Let's clear out where you're looking at your practice and a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. I am in Sugarland. I practice in Sugarland. I am in Texas.
What is your practice called?
Oh, yeah. Right on. Okay. So I have 2 that I work at. So my practice is called Open Narrative Counseling. And then I also work for Robin Lee Counseling as well. I work with trauma, neurodivergence. I work with children, adults. I find that adults are tiny, larger children, and especially with when it comes to sensitive materials, not because they act like children, but because it just hurts, right? It just hurts. Feeling vulnerable makes us feel small. So that's why I work with both populations.
I love my job.
It took me a long time to fall into the job just because of being undiagnosed for the longest time. I was just like, maybe I'll go over here and having expansive interests, but yet only being engaged in certain interests and just believing that if I tried harder, I could do it.
Can you share with us what it means for a listening audience who may not be clinicians, what undiagnosed means?
It just means that I had no idea what was going on. I thought I was just, this is how everybody is.
Yeah.
And they have the secret and I don't. That's how I experienced life. Like, even as a kid amongst my family, I was like, they know something that I don't know. And it was like a puzzle.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I got into this idea of like just being okay with being an observer
Yeah.
that I really understood what worked for me and what didn't. Like an observer of self and an observer of others.
Yeah. And so we're talking today a little bit about neurodivergence and how this topic comes forward. And so we're clinicians and we're also looking at neurodivergence, including autism and ADHD and other neurodiverse conditions. And then we also, as this is our EMDR channel, always love how to weave in EMDR in there.
The cognitive interweave.
Yes. So I wanted to just wonder if you can explain a little bit about what neurodivergence is and how you became to understand a little bit more about that.
Well, okay, so neurodivergence is anything that falls under the diagnostic spectrum of having a brain that's wired differently. So high IQ can be sometimes considered neurodivergency. ADHD, dyslexia, OCD is sometimes thrown in there depending on who you're talking to. Autism, right? And then all of that has a spectrum
Right.
in there. There's a spectrum of autism, there's a spectrum of ADHD, there's a spectrum of OCD, and then there's a spectrum of dyslexia. And then there's all the little tiny pieces of diagnoses that go under those things like PDA and which is persistent demand avoidance. And
That's a good one for me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
it all depends on how you color it. Then there's alexithymia, sensory processing disorder, audio processing disorder. I don't know if that falls under the umbrella, but I do know that falls under the experience. And then you have trauma on top of the neuro
Yeah.
experience, right? Then you just and then you have culture and then you have everything and then it just becomes this beautiful tapestry of what are we going to hit on today?
What are we going to do today, kids?
Yes. That's why I like using EMDR with neurodivergency because I'm not here for the answer and I'm not going to give anybody an answer, but I am here for the conversation.
Good.
You know what I mean? Always. I'm always down for a conversation.
That's what I love about you. You're always just as curious as I am, and our brains go like very fast. And so I always say with ADHD brains, we go fast. It could be a superpower. It can also be a challenge too.
Yeah, especially so the way I like to frame neurodivergence is just a hyper awareness of agency. And then some of us are really good at trying to protect our agency. And some of us are just like, I have to figure out how to make it work. And a wiggly body is a sign of trying to hold on to agency.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that.
Sometimes it's anxiety. If we look at it in the classroom, sometimes it's anxiety. Sometimes it's trauma happening outside of the classroom. Sometimes it's a neurodivergent body whose the lights are so loud. And so I gotta do something with that. And then sometimes it's a neurodivergent body that's you can't tell me to sit down.
Yeah.
I get how you want me to sit down, but I don't care. And it's not like I don't care because I don't care about the community and I don't care about systems and I don't care about everything else. It's just this awareness of agency.
So
Just
let me
like,
ask you, how did you become, I know that you characterize yourself as neurodiverse as well. And so can you talk to us a little bit about like how you began? We have neurodivergence. So really when we think about neurodivergence, it's a lot of sensory components, light,
social.
textures, sounds, being in our body, all of these sensory experiences. So we have that, right? We come into this world with all of these bright lights and then we have trauma, right? What inspired you to adapt EMDR for neurodivergent clients? And how do you begin to think about that?
Okay, so when I was in my training for EMDR, I took it with Rick Levinson in Austin. And on all the negative cognitions, I was like, but that's true, right? I can't trust my judgment. That's true. I don't know how else to put it. In an EMDR, if it's true, it won't work. It's a moot point. I was trying to explain that in my practicum with
The consultant.
so I tried to explain that. So we were supposed to do a float back and we were training on the float back and mine went to a place at school where all of the neurodivergence was happening and I wasn't aware. And then the memory I had was, I was like, but this is true. The negative cognition is true. It's absolutely true. And I was trying to explain that to them and they were like, No, it's not." And it was like, "No, it totally is." And then I asked Rick a question. I said, "It's true." And then he was like, "Then what does that say about you?" And it hit me. And then my whole body lit up. And I was like, "Okay, thank you. I gotta go bye." And then because I was about to just like cry. Because that's the difference. When it's true, it doesn't light up in my body. I don't feel it as a sensory experience because I don't want to cuss, but I do want to cuss so bad. That would that would help me so much right now.
Yeah.
Cussing is my stimming, but so I really nothing would light up. I was like, "This is true. It's true." And then so when he got me to go deeper, I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go eat my lunch and cry now." And so I was like, "Yeah, how many of us,
Yeah.
but we're not feeling it? We can't feel it." And then if you're neurodivergent and then you just have no interoception to begin with, that's worse.
That's so important. So with the MDR training, we have 40 hours of instruction and we have these little groups. You have an observer, a listener, and a mock client. And so we're asked to go through these experiences in these small groups ourselves. And so we have this lived experience as we go through this. My brain that night was like, I felt like it was like a library. It was like filing material, and I don't even know what's going on. Right? And so, what the heck? And so then when I went back to work, so we did these EMDR trainings on the weekends, which in my practice, when I do EMDR trainings, I'm going to make it during the week so we don't burn out clinicians. I knew like when I went back to work Monday, my whole body was just drained and tired. And I wasn't even working on a big traumatic incident. And so I think really helping people understand that the material in our brains can be resolved with EMDR because of that body sensation you had. You're never going to forget it. And it's like you'll know when it's cleared. Yes, powerful as we're treating patients with neurodivergence. So, what are some of the strategies for our EMDR clinicians out there, maybe thinking about providing EMDR, doing EMDR, and then they have a neurodivergent client? What are some of the strategies maybe tips we can offer?
Number one, always trust your client.
Mhm.
Always. Just always. If they tell you I can't feel it, believe them.
Yeah.
Don't always think it's trauma related because then you conceptualize in a different direction. Put a pin in it, okay, there could be trauma. As long as you're doing your ACEs, you should know whether or not there's trauma in there. And you're doing your DES, you should know what's going on. Ask questions in your DES to see if it's, I don't listen really well. Like I listen and then I go, I always think of Homer Simpson when somebody's talking to him at the apple cider war and his brain leaves his head. I don't care. It's going to go over here.
So it can be conceptualized as dissociation, right?
Yeah,
And
but
that's
it's really I'm just disengaged.
it's just their brains, just it doesn't really matter. I'm over here doing whatever the work it does the brain.
And then when you have ADHD, you're like, "Oh, I know how this sentence is gonna go." And you're just like, "Finish the sentence." And I'm guilty of that too, because then I have odd ADHD. When I'm conceptualizing a case, I bring out every single detail, as
Yeah.
you have experienced, where it's, "No, but you need to know this. No, but you need," because I really want an answer that fits the puzzle versus an
Sure.
answer that where I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
I've already thought about that or felt that."
How do you
So
experience your own neurodivergence when you're with a neurodivergent patient? Are you dysregulated sometimes,
no.
or do you regulate? Sometimes I feel like I have patients that are neurodivergent too, and sometimes we just have this really fun, here's how we get what we need.
Oh, yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's just like a unsaid, unspoken rapport that we
Yeah.
have together, and it can be really fun. I don't find it dysregulating. We just always call it like, "Hey, what are you doing with your hands there?" Or "What's going on in your body?" And it can be a really good conversation for a rapport. What have you experienced with your patients?
Going back to the staples, like behavior is conversation.
Yeah.
You don't need the exact words to have communication. Like attunement is imperative, right? So if you notice, I'm not giving you eye contact because I'm trying to focus. Because as soon as I look at you,
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, "Hey,
It's like too much. I need you to focus on this. No more information in the brain. This is what's going on fire right here.
I want to know how your plants are doing." Like I have all of these other conversations that I'm like,
It's
I need to know
overload.
how the plants are. And if a cat pops up, and like if I'm doing something online and a cat or a dog pops up, I'm like, everybody stop.
Yeah.
Just please let me know what that animal's name is, and then we can continue after that. But so like I have people who are like, and then I was, "Ah," and so instead of being like, what word would you put with? uh,
Yeah.
I understand, like, that's a bit of surprise and that's a bit of awe, or depending on the context of the story, right? Understand the story that's unfolding in front of you and how they're communicating it. And
Yeah.
sometimes slow them down depending on it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do that right away. I'm not going to start session one or even session two asking them to like connect. I'm going to build confidence in our ability to communicate with each other and understand each other first before I go into so how would you like to adjust, and how would you like to even be in your body?
What I think is so powerful with at least the ADHD neurodivergent clients is we have our history and then we go into stabilization of the nervous system. For people that don't know what EMDR is, then we work on a memory or set of events that are tied to a belief. And so when we're in that process, when we're using the eye movements and helping them understand, part of EMDR is notice what comes up. There's so much information, right? Like you had said, I need to divert my eyes because there's too much information in your setting. There's so much information. I think one of the main interventions that's so effective is it's just information, but
Yeah.
there's so much. So I came up with this metaphor analogy just this week. Okay, so it was
Okay.
like it's like you are going to a carnival and you walk through the carnival and you know that there's food, that there's cows, that there's all the things going, you know that there's rides. There's no ticket takers. The rides don't have carnival workers. There's no line for the rides. This Ferris wheel is just going around. You go to get something to eat. Nobody's regulating the nacho cheese with the chips. Nobody's making sure that the corn dog mix is correct with the correct sticks. Nobody's taking money. The line, people are just grabbing a corn dog. The popcorn's everywhere, right? There's a cow in the middle of the walkway. And so it's like we have all of this information. And the way I describe EMDR is that's what brain comes to us. Then what we do with EMDR is we take all of that information and we make it into a nice line. So when you go to get the corn dog, there's a line. You have money. You know where the money is. You pay for it. You eat the corn dog, and there's nothing wrong. There's no personal sense of responsibility that you showed up at the carnival and it's chaos, right? Responsibility is not yours. You just came, right? And it was like, oh, okay. So we take these, now we have this experience at the carnival where we can go on a ride if we want to. There's a ticket taker that's going to make sure that it's safe. The ride's safe. There's not going too fast. I'm not going to fly off the Megatron or whatever. And so we just need some regulation in the system in certain categories so we can conceptualize and understand it. And then also realize I don't need to talk to every person that attended the carnival.
Yeah.
And so it's this observation, this great experience to where people can feel like it's not their responsibility. It's just what the carnival was.
Yeah.
And so by working with EMDR and taking that little piece, I'm focusing on it, it can generalize the treatment effects to other parts of the brain and make it a full, fun experience where we are looking at the horses, where the horses should be, the cows. And that's a metaphor I came up this week with in regards to, and that person that I used that intervention with was like, yes, just information, and cognitive interweave is a little piece of information that can shift that. And so that's one of the interweaves or metaphors that I used with EMDR. So it can be very effective. What did you think about that as I was saying that to you? What's going on in your body, your thought, emotion channel?
My son went on a field trip to a place called Dewberry Farms. And that's exactly what it was like. I was a chaperone, so I was responsible not only for my child, but the children of other parents who love these little beings that are just around. There was the sun. First of all, there was the sun, and it was alive and happening that day. It was just, you couldn't stop it. There was not a cloud in the sky to stop it from doing what it was going to do. I had sunglasses on, but it was not like I even dressed. I did all the things that I'm supposed to do, right? But I don't know if it was a combination of being outside and then overstimulated with all of the children and all of the things. And then the duty of making sure I know where all of my group of children are at the same time, and then making sure they're hydrated, and then all of this stuff. I just remember at the end of that day, taking my kid home and then just laying on the couch and just being like, I am the couch, like trying to get my body back into itself because it's the sensory. It all goes out this way and then it comes in this way. And so to just take it, I would love to be able to take it one at a time. I'd love to have been able to just be like, we're walking through the door. And this is where we eat, and this is where we go to the bathroom, and this is where
Yeah.
they play. And that is, if you added trauma on top of that, right? Then then it's like way too much information. And why would you want to process it?
Yeah.
It was overwhelming to begin with. And then something bad happened. And then it was just like,
Sometimes I find with patients that with ADHD I'm treating, sometimes they can process very quickly. Boom. Have you had that experience as well? Can you
yeah.
talk a little bit about your experience treating patients like that?
With ADHD, it's like we always have to go faster. Sometimes faster, shorter sets, sometimes faster, longer sets, depending on the person's ability to resource and their history, of course, always history. I find that they like the ball online more than they like my hands.
Okay.
I have to make sure if I'm doing it in person that there's no other scent. Sometimes I can't have put lotion on or even my hand sanitizer on. So if I'm going to do something with somebody with ADHD, I really have to like neutralize my area. The only reason why my lights are on in my office right now is because it looked a little moody with the other lights on. I hate overhead lighting. I always have my lights off just to bring the nervous system back down, especially with people who have ADHD. I always keep my lights off. And I always do, what do they call that? Mood lighting, but it's called atmospheric lighting. So that way they can get back connected to self.
Yeah. And even that sense of coming into the office. So I have my overhead lights on too. And I also have lamps. You can see one in the bag right there. And it has a little lever of like how hot, how not. And so that's a really important point. Just assessing your lighting in your office if you're a clinician, creating that atmosphere. I always had lamps even when I worked at the hospital. I think that's so important to have that sense of tone, that felt sense of comfort when you're walking into that space and feeling like you can actually rest and digest, and again, in that parasympathetic nervous system.
I have one that is strictly online and she's amazing at processing. Just amazing at it because she does the same thing. She sets it up for her to just really focus, and she follows the dot really well, and like she gets really far in session really quick. With autistic individuals, it's a little different. But what I would like to just point out and say, I've had a lot of people with ADHD and autism try EMDR. The therapist has told them that they do it wrong. And
Well, if you're a therapist, please don't say that to patients. Please
yeah.
don't. We have a lot of trust in us. That would be like number one. So please don't do that to people.
Yeah. And so I always give the orientation and the comfort of saying it's not your job to do EMDR. It's my job to have the tools
Yeah.
to make sure EMDR is going in a direction that it needs to go in. And basically, it's like I let you do whatever you want to do, but if you
Yeah.
get into stuck points, that's where I intervene. Or if I see that you're like, I'll vocalize something just to make sure that you're still present. But to keep my job is to keep you here in the room while you're processing back
What
here.
does that do? That makes them feel
Yeah.
like it's a performance. So when that feels like it's a performance with the patient and therapist, it doesn't allow you to be vulnerable and process. I had a consultee this week, and she was saying there was this moment with my therapist, and we were there and we were processing, and there was a group of people in another room, interns that were making a lot of noise and disrupting the session. And the moment I bonded with my therapist was when she banged on the wall and said, "Hey, calm down. We're doing business in here." And so that again, like the client just felt, "Oh, this is my person." It was like,
Yeah.
like that sense of safety is so important. There is no interference with what they're processing, and creating those safe boundaries within our culture of our office and our community can build that rapport and confidence too. Again, so yeah, I love what you're saying about we're the facilitators and we have to protect that space for the client and for them to say, you are so inadequate at this.
Yeah.
I would don't do that. No,
Just
just
another
target like them.
I know exactly.
You can't.
I also like with some of my clients, so if there's a combination of autism and high anxiety, which usually there is, right? I dress the same. I don't wear different clothing because it's the ability to predict what they're going to get into that I think helps open up channels, if you will, or just the idea that they can get back to self when they walk through my door.
And this idea of self, right? So I was having a conversation this week about therapy,
Mhm.
which is DBT skills, put water on your face, eat some chocolate, take a nap, do a
Yeah.
walk, random DBT skill. So what the difference is with the EMDR is this psychotherapy, is this sense of self. And when you have and integrate a client that comes in and they have a distorted sense of self, right? Or they don't even know they have a sense of self because of all this information. They just are walking information, and to feel like, oh, I have a self, and just to cut those channels of information to be like landing on the couch.
Mhm.
But so it's like that sense of if we can just cut that information and just allow it to be, we can enhance that sense of self. And so this is a real psychotherapy. We're getting to the core of why am I dysregulated and anxious? Oh, it's because of this belief that I had that my therapist said that I wasn't doing it right, that reinforced all of these messages in my past. My past self that at 3, I wasn't doing it right because I wasn't eating the food off my plate correctly or whatever. And so that activated that network of
Yeah.
deeper issue, but we just treat oh, you're worth it, you matter. No, we have to go back to
Yeah.
what the origin or the source is, and that's what we do with EMDR. It's so beautiful.
And then we have to let them experience their neurodivergence as they experience it. We can't say, you're really good at empathy. Great. Narrative is completely different from everybody else's in the world. It has similarities, right? But the way my brain is wired is the way it's wired. And then because I have amazing observational skills and because of the narrative of my systemic environment as a child with my home and then all the outward systemic influences, right? That's how my brain got to have high empathy. We need to change our idea from myopic to more expansive of what it is our clients experience when they fall under a diagnostic criteria. I understand the need to have the diagnostic criteria, but there's so people have done so much work to expand upon that looks like this too, and it looks like this, and it feels like this. So I think there's, and then allowing neurodivergent people to never get to zero, I think is really important
Ooh, tell me about that.
because, again, things are true. And neurodivergent populations, especially children, are the highest, like they have the highest, or they have a high. I can't say highest because zoom out, not in. They have a high, here we go. It's getting stuck. They have a high statistics for assault. And because of that, we like anybody who's a victim of trauma, like getting to zero is not exactly appropriate for people who need to like understand. I'm losing it. For people that need to,
For people that,
are environments that are not going to change. Does that make sense? So we're not changing the wiring of the brain, and we're doing EMDR on a neurodivergent person. So that also needs to be understood. We're not going to change the neurodiversity. It's always going to be
right,
there.
the biological mechanism.
I need to know that I can handle myself and that I can do it and that I can trust my intuition or I can trust these things, right? So it's not so much about getting to zero and clearing it out in the same capacity as other people, but it is about getting confident in who they are with the situation that they've experienced.
And
Does that
isn't
make
that so much more powerful? So she's talking about the subjective unit of distress scale that we use in EMDR 0 to 10.
Yeah.
So when we get
Yeah.
to zero, that means we've cleared the target. But I think what you're saying is so much more impactful for me to hear because I could have a client say, "Yep, it's cleared. It's a zero," and that's sometimes clients are very vigilant about, "I need to be a zero." And no,
Yeah.
look at the state change. If you've had a state change that's going to be with you outside of therapy that's so effective, who cares what the rating is?
Yeah.
So for a neurodivergent client, that's gonna have to be a zero. There's also a sense that felt sense is very important. And there's also a sense of if I get to zero, then who am I?
Yeah.
What does that mean for me? And so there's a lot of, as a grief and loss therapist, it could be a sense of loss of identity, or what would that mean? Because this has been in the background working ever since childhood, this belief or this experience. And so if I resolve that, then what am I left with? So it can be a very vulnerable identity and a sense of self as well. And so would we rather have them have this felt lived sense of this adaptive, this state change that they've had? Can we enhance that and say, yes, even though we have this material, this is what we want to enhance is your right now self, the self that's able to go and feel adaptive and healthy and whole and like you matter in the world. And that is enough.
See, you hold the science. I'm like, I know there's words. I just don't have them right now. Very overstimulated. But and then you said something in there, and I was like, oh, yeah, we need to point that out too. Because it also happens culturally, right? We can't expect people who have a cultural difference to get to zero as well. It's just like the truth. But this is the truth. Like, you can't tell them, no, it's not, right? Because then their
Yeah.
defenses get up.
Yeah.
And then you're like, there's nothing that's going to be processed because there's already a block to process if you say, no, it's not. Your truth is not true. So you have to let all things be in the room. You have to let the universe be in the room with your own universe, your own.
Yes, I love that.
And then you have to let it go. And a lot of my clients are like, what is this? Is this the neurodiversity? Is this my cultural background? Or is it and I'm like, again, we're not here for the answer. We're here for the conversation. And EMDR just speeds up that conversation.
Yeah.
They get to pick and choose, or they get to understand through their own somatic experience and through the clearing and the SUDS difference, like they get to pick and choose, or their nervous system gets to actually communicate what it is, what it was, what it is they want to hold on to, what it is they want to let go of.
magical process. I had a client that said, this feels like magic. And I think EMDR is getting more talked about. And I feel like the state change or the shift is really what EMDR, there's such a vast amount of information to learn too about
Yeah.
the body and the nervous system. And so it can also keep stimulating us to learn and grow in the field and expand our skill sets. When I found EMDR, I had been working with clients for years that were going through this narrative experience of the CBT process. And there's nothing wrong with CBT. I use CBT, but it's dissecting the trauma with the thought, the emotion of every incident through analysis, which is our frontal brain,
Yeah.
versus getting to the psychology behind it of we know that happened, but what did you believe? And every person that has that same experience will experience it differently through their own body and emotion and thought channel. And so getting them to feel like, okay, let's dissect what did you believe or what did this reinforce and work on that with bilateral stimulation versus the reliving and the retelling of that experience is just where the magic is.
And then, so I do parts work as well, right? Because neurodivergent people, autism spectrum compartmentalization is just a part of it, right? So I do parts work and I do somatic work as well. And the reason I like to do somatic work with EMDR is just it gives them the freedom to, do you need to walk this out as we do the bilateral stimulation? Like people will be
That's fine.
rocking, they'll be walking and the buzzers will be going, shake your hands. Some people will be doing this while the buzzers are going. I also use art a lot with my clients. And I have a big pad of paper and I use Mr. Sketch smelly markers
Okay.
to track their EMDR progress. Like I use it so they can see it. There's a visualization there. So when you're working with neurodivergent clients, you just have to if you're working with any client, you just really have to attune. And sometimes a visual is more impactful. We live in a
Yes.
very visual based world. Neurodivergents are not. Like people are being told what to do by signs all the time. That's what green light, red light, yellow light is. We pay attention to signs and we pay attention to words. So I write a lot of my things down and I let them see it. Or I write red, no, this, and I write it in red. And then I write yes, this in green. Because our brain is just attuned to those things on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
When using those.
Yeah.
In the chat, can you explain again neurodivergency and how we conceptualize that as therapists? What is
Okay.
neurodivergency in the brain?
So it's just a different wiring in the brain. I don't have all of the tiny little details that somebody else may have, but it's just your brain is wired differently. So in the DSM-5, it's like sensory experience, social experience. Stimming is so repetition, hyper focus on engaged materials, and then I can't remember the other qualifiers, but it's essentially the social aspect is almost like you'll hear that there's the idea of not really understanding what it is, of having to figure it out, of always feeling on the outside of something. So there's is what I was explaining before. And then the other neurodivergence is ADHD, which is hyperactivity or inattentiveness. And that one's all about executive functioning. And there's dyslexia, and there's 7 or 8 different types of dyslexia that's out there. There's sensory processing disorder, there's audio processing disorder, there is OCD is also in the umbrella sometimes, depending on who you're. Then you have symptoms of perfectionism, persistent demand avoidance, alexithymia is a part of the neurodivergent experience. It's not necessarily a neurodivergent diagnosis. I believe that's the same with audio processing as well. It's a part of the neurodivergent experience, but not necessarily full on neurodivergence.
You have a brain. And so you have the ideas of ADHD, the executive functioning, is there some dysregulation, right? Or you have the sensory part. So in a lot of neurodivergence, there's like these sensory parts that are just or the social parts, right? So we got to explain it, the DSM.
Like how that's why like my autistic brain was like, okay, let's get really technical. And you're like, to put it simply. And then but I think that's the play, that's the dynamic, right? Like my ADHD was kicking in because that's when I wanted to go in a tangent specifically about OCD. And then I was like, we got to put that over there because then that's not answering the question.
challenges, right? It's just like doing that for yourself all the time. Also understanding that we're still perfect. We're still how we're meant to be. But also working with the brain, we have to understand like this impulsivity or this information overload or the sensory component that you're just so beautifully describing there about the visuals and corporate. And so I think if you look at neurodivergence as a whole, which has just more become common language in therapists just in the last couple of years in my realms, we had autism and we had ADHD, but now we have an overarching kind of under explanation or theoretical model in regards to why certain things are happening with different types of brains. So that's how I have thought about it. It's just as was it the autism spectrum disorder or the Asperger's kind of went away, then we have been reconceptualizing or rethinking about different types of brains. And it's just been a journey. It's been a trip, all the things.
And I would definitely take some classes. Like, there's a lot of trainers out there that are ready to speak about neurodivergency because it's so important. There's Embrace Autism. That's a website there's a bunch of screeners on there that talk about neurodiversity, equate it to, oh, they don't have a lot of empathy or they don't have social skills. And I'm chock full of empathy. It's ridiculous. It makes me like, I love sleep because it's like the only time I'm not empathizing.
Our brain just gets to rest. Oh, thank God it's over. That was so much work.
Even then, my brain will wake me up in the middle of the night and go, oh, you should stop doing that because blah, 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 blah. Or you need to check on that. And I go, thank you, thank you. Can we just go back to sleep? I promise I will totally do what you said, brain, but I need to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I've trained my brain enough to be like, you're right. You do deserve sleep.
But when you're living in a brain like that with no skills to do that, right?
Yeah.
You're at the carnival or the corn dogs over at the cows. Okay, that's what we mean, right? But let's bring a corn dog back where you're supposed to eat it. The cows will visit in a minute, right? We're sleeping now.
That's what I wanted to talk about. That's what I was talking about. Okay, so those who did not get diagnosed in childhood and those who have a late diagnosis, there's so much grief that goes into the
Yes.
And so you specialize in grief. So this is like, you have to process that grief too.
Yeah.
And if your client is not ready to accept that maybe neurodivergence is a part of their narrative,
Yeah.
then don't bring it up. Don't
Yeah.
do it, right? Don't like people have to be comfortable with their diagnosis and whether or not they want to be diagnosed. So is it going to be helpful for them to know that they're neurodivergent if they keep wanting to be accepted by the outside world as a neurotypical person and keep trying to live as a neurotypical person? Is it going to help for some people? Yes, because they're ready to change, or not change, but like acceptance, right? You have to accept something. But if they're not willing to accept, then that diagnosis isn't going to do anything but cause a rift between you and that client.
So I think I really appreciate your point there on the diagnosing, because we understand these with the patient. Is the patient ready to have that experience? And I think that's a very good empathic point of empathy that we really need to talk about. We were just talking about narcissism and borderline. Do we tell those patients like, hey, because what are they going to do? They're going to go research it. They're going to go figure, and they'll have all this information that probably doesn't apply. And then I've done it where I slowly insert little pieces of information about what it is over time. But if it's going to impact them in a negative way, then we just don't need to. It's not for their highest and greatest good.
Yeah. And to add to that, because I love this brain of mine, neurodivergency is sometimes mistaken for BPD or
Yes.
major depressive disorder, or actually vice versa. So major depressive, am I saying it correctly? Where here we go.
You're right. Yeah, neurodivergence is mistaken for those more common diagnoses like anxiety or depression, or they don't see the realm of it, right? Is that what I mean?
So I'm trying to say that they will be diagnosed with, so it didn't make me upset. Those who are diagnosed with bipolar may have ADHD, depending on what's really going on there, how they experience it. And with general anxiety disorder and depression, That might be neurodivergency in there as well. BPD, so if you have a neurodivergent client who also has trauma, but not like little t trauma, like giant T trauma and like conditioning on top of that that made them have a bunch of negative cognitions. There might be some BPD traits that are happening in the behavior
And if
because
we're
of
not educated on neurodivergence or EMDR or assessing the brain, we can give them this diagnosis can be harmful, right?
yeah,
So understanding what this is and these symptoms, especially I think anxiety. Like I just
yes.
have to tick or I just have to do the oh, this is what this really is, and it's okay. And so my Rewired 360 is where we rewire how you learn, lead, and thrive, but also understand like with those neurodivergent pathways, we have to adapt because the brain is what it is. No matter what medication is there, we can amp down the anxiety. We can work on the depression. Personality disorders are a different realm, but I think they can often be sometimes be medicated when it's just these ways, the skills of adapting and understanding how to work with the brain that was given.
Yes. And it's like, how do you handle anxiety if the sun is what's making you
Yeah.
anxious?
Oh my gosh. Wow.
The sun makes me so anxious.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I know it's the giver of life as well. So like water and the sun, but it's just me and the sun, boy. We always have conversations.
And you're
Or
in Texas, right? Where there's a lot.
uh,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Idaho where we have a full 4 seasons, and it's not as
No.
probably difficult as where you're at. Did you grow up there?
I grew up a little bit in El Paso, a little bit of California, a little bit, and then a big chunk of it in Houston.
Was the sun always present in all those places?
Boy, like El Paso's the desert. And that's the other thing too. Like, I really think play is very much missing in session.
We're very playful people.
Oh man.
And tell us, we're just about ready to close out our time. What advice would you give to anybody that maybe is neurodivergent, considering EMDR, a therapist, a few tips for working with people that are neurodivergent? I have a few, but I wanted to ask you first.
If you are neurodivergent and you want to go to therapy, find a neurodivergent affirming therapist. Sometimes they market it out and they say that. And if somebody offers a free consultation, ask them, what do you know about neurodivergency? And if
Yeah.
they say anything, just be like, okay, thank you so much for your time.
And for those clients maybe that don't know that's what's going on too, being able to understand there's a sensory experience and these other
Yeah.
things, but you don't. So it's finding somebody is important even if they don't specifically
Yeah.
address it.
And then too, like for clinicians, if you want to be a clinician that specializes in something, go for it. And if neurodivergency is not what you want to specialize in, just I love people who refer out. And I've had clinicians help somebody find somebody. Like that's how they found me was because a clinician helped them find
Oh
me.
yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
who would fit. But if you are interested in learning how to help people who have EMDR needs and are neurodivergent, there are trainings out there. Christine
Yeah.
Molina has a training. I know there that's live. She has a live training and then she thinks she's done it like 3 times a year. And hers is about subtle autism. There's Susan Paulson, who has one for level 2 and level 3 autism, which is really needed.
Mhm.
Those kids, they have successful EMDR sessions as well. Then there is Sandra Paulson has ones that's live. And then Kathy Steele has somebody who does an autism and EMDR training as well. But the information is out there. Be curious, stay open, stay curious,
Yes.
playful.
Yeah.
Oh, we need it so much.
Well, we get so bogged down with all of the seriousness too. I think it would be definitely interesting if we both lived near each other.
Thank you for having me, Kathy.
Messina Delgado. You can find her in the link in the chat notes. I'm Kathy Couch with Rewired 360. Join us on our YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe. We will post all of our podcasts here on YouTube so you can hop on with us and chat. So thank you so much for everyone, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Yes.
Bye.